Week by week, I know what I'm going to sow, what I'm going to transplant, and what I'm going to harvest. The month of January is also the time for planting crops and purchasing seeds. We order about 60 different varieties of vegetables, so it is prepared and organized a bit. Before choosing the seeds I'm going to buy, I do my crop planning. A big Excel spreadsheet with lots of different colors depending on whether it is a time when I sow, transplant, or harvest. Vegetable by vegetable, week by week. I know what I am going to sow, what I am going to transplant, what I am going to harvest, and based on the space I have in my gardens and the production I hope to achieve. And then we know that we are going to plant 10 tomato plants. 10 tomato plants means 10 tomato seeds. So we buy a packet of 10 seeds, maybe a second one because there might be some failures. Here we are on a permanent bed. The beds never move, so we have the design of the garden. And then on each of the beds, we say, okay, here, I will put a combination of tomato and basil. There you go. That's the main crop, the tomato. In combination, I will add some basil. Since I want to increase density, I will first sow a little mesclun. On the planting bed, the mesclun will grow quite quickly. We'll be able to eat it by the end of March, April. I make several cuts of mesclun. Then I sowed my tomato in the greenhouse, let's say at the end of March, and I transplanted in early May, mid-May, depending on the weather. Transplanted into the ground. There is no more mesclun. By the way, I removed all the mesclun before transplanting the tomato to possibly make a sowing of radishes. So I prepared my planting bed again. I added a bit of compost. I make my smidradi. Then I transplant my tomatoes. In the middle of that, I put basil. On my planting bed, they are all 80 centimeters wide and 11 meters long. In the central aisle, I will put a row of lettuce that I also sowed in pots and that I transplant. At the same time as I transplant my tomatoes. The tomatoes at first are small, so the lettuces can grow without competing with the tomatoes. I harvest my lettuces 3 months later. I let the tomatoes grow until mid-October, late October. The tomato plant can produce a lot. By the end of August, September, the tomato plant is quite large because I grow them tall. I can remove the foliage at the base of the tomatoes to let light in again. And there I can do a SMI, which is called intercropping. And I do a SMI of spinach, for example. Finally, and this is where the importance of planning comes in, during the year on this planting bed, I will have mesclun, I will have radishes, I will have tomatoes, basil, a lettuce, and then spinach. So that makes 6. And also, along the planting bed, I love to put green onions everywhere. It doesn't take up too much space, it's really good, and it's a great companion plant. And at the end of each bed, marigolds, which are good companion plants for tomatoes. And then you also have to think about rotations. I'm not very strict about it, but it's not a big deal. I put a little bit of everything everywhere, all the time. When I say everything, I mean all types of families, of crops. We do rotations to avoid soil depletion or having the same vegetable in the same place all the time. But since we put a little bit of everything, all the time, everywhere, it's less serious not to do too many rotations. Planning is an important task. It's important to prepare well, but my little experience shows that what I planned is never what happens. I rely heavily on literature about organic gardening. There are a lot of books on the subject. And there you go. So I rely on that, I create a plan, then we let nature do its thing, and we adapt.